Welcome, everyone, to the Urantia book. If you fancy yourself a critical thinker, I suggest that you take any 10 pages of this book and any 10 pages of any other spiritual book that you would randomly get off of the bookshelves or maybe your favorite or anything like that, and just do a comparison. Read 10 and read 10 and say, which one really seems like it was written by superhuman intelligence? There really is only one on the planet, but you don't need to take my word for that. Make sure you bookmark this in your head, like and subscribe, all of that. The Urantia book. There is a book on the planet that was not written by by human beings. It was written by superhuman beings. And let us look at this paper on spiritual communion on page 1133. And we're just going to say, geez, is that what the kind of caliber that I hear when I read my other spiritual books? Be it your such and such of a yogi or any of these types of books that are out there on the New Age bookshelves or anything. Look at how much this synthesizes everything. But remember, knowledge for the sake of knowledge is meaningless. Wisdom is the adaptation and application of that which you do know. So this isn't just to learn something and say, oh, that's great. It's really to apply this in your daily living, to say, wow, I have a fragment of divinity within me. I have already chosen this eternal path, and I can let negativity just brush off of my shoulder. I can smile through it all. It doesn't matter what's happening. It doesn't matter if there's some sort of physical ailment or something. I'll do my best to change that, but I will set my sights for eternity. I will set my mind Godward, and my spirit will soar. Spiritual communion. The characteristic difference between a social occasion and a religious gathering is that, in contrast with the secular, the religious is pervaded by the atmosphere of communion. In this way, human association generates a feeling of fellowship with the divine, and this is the beginning of group worship. So communion is this fellowshipping with the divine. Partaking of a communion meal was the earliest type of social communion, of course, because as we evolved from animals, we got to base it around food, right? Even if you go to church these days, at the end, what are they going to hit you with? The coffee and the donuts. We're going to hit you with a little diabetes in there right at the end. Okay, so food, all the way up through our evolution. And so did early religions provide that some portion of the ceremonial sacrifice should be eaten by the worshipers. Even in Christianity, the Lord's Supper retains this mode of communion. The atmosphere of the communion provides a refreshing and comforting period of truce in the conflict of the self-seeking ego with the altruistic urge of the indwelling spirit monitor. So remember, the indwelling spirit monitor is your personal fragment of divinity, a perfect fragment that is yours to work with you and see how your exact path of eternal ascension is going to play out, but it's all based on free will. So that's why that's capitalized there. That's such a key, important component in your spiritual journey, but that is an altruistic urge that's within. So when you're at some sort of church service or something like that, we're not sitting there thinking about how we're going to backstab our way up the corporate ladder, or it's not one of those self improvement talks, right, that we see in the New Age a lot. It's more like, how are we going to, rise up and become closer to God? So they all, even though they might have their downsides, all these different religions and ceremonies and things like that have their lower human nature still attached to it, there is still that positive seed of truth within every one of man's religions. So you can purely focus on that and just let go of the downside human input into it, all right? And you'll see they're going to talk about that more. So that is the prelude of true worship. And what is true worship? The practice of the presence of God, which eventuates in the emergence of the brotherhood of man. So if you're doing true worship, then you're in this mindset that we are in the presence of divinity. And it's also, that's like an Eastern type of thing, like being in the moment, feeling in the divine presence. So you can't be in the presence of divinity if you are thinking about what happened in your dead past, I made this mistake, that mistake, or you're thinking about the fictitious, imaginary future that can only be had in the eternal now moment. When primitive man felt that his communion with God had been interrupted, he resorted to sacrifice of some kind in an effort to make atonement. So think to your mind, sacrifice, that's primitive. To restore friendly relationships. So he thinks he needs to do, we're not in the light anymore. We got to do a sacrifice. So you can see how backwards these things looked to, when we look back, we say, wow, they got together and they did a sacrifice to God. They got together, all these virgins and threw them in a volcano or whatever, however they manifested this type of thing. We can now look back at that and say, ugh, that's so ungodly. That's in the same way that our future generations are going to look back at what we do in our various rituals, whether they be drinking the blood from the cup and this and that. Even if it's a symbol, even if it's wine, they're going to look back at wine and say, oh, that was primitive. I mean, their scientists knew that that caused cancer, yet they still did it. Same thing with the diabetes donuts. They're going to say, oh, see, that's how we're applying these things, everybody, okay? That's how we're allowing ourselves, because even in other parts of the book, they talk about that it takes a body of clean habits and a mind of perfect poise. That is clean habit in order to then have your spiritual ascension. They also talk about polluting the earthly tabernacle, quote, which means adding things to your body that are going to cause dis-ease. So we have to be practical about our spiritual search, even if it means, hey, maybe I'm going to have to, and we'll see. It continues on, but the hunger and thirst for righteousness leads to the discovery of truth. See, this is beautiful, genius passage right here. So you're hungering for righteousness, right? Which means that you really I want to live in the right here. I don't want to have these ideals that are less than godly, less than loving, That's what righteousness is. It's really like, that's not just self-righteousness either. Self-righteousness is, I just have the right answers. Righteousness is you're taking everything into consideration, including medical data and scientific data. That leads to the discovery of truth. And truth augments ideals. Okay, so now your ideals are being upstepped. And this creates new problems for the individual religionists, right? And this donut thing is an exact idea of that. We have a new problem here. We know that these cause diabetes, yet we're still giving them out. And we're still doing the bacon and eggs at the end of the service. So that's our new problem. And that's just one small example. You could have a million different examples when you start to really look at it. And it says, for our ideals tend to grow by geometrical progression, while our ability to live up to them is enhanced only by arithmetical progression, however you say that. But arithmetical, maybe. So the way that I see that, when you see that and you know your ideal is correct and you're saying, yeah, I'm taking it all into consideration, and yeah, I really would like to get rid of that habit of the sugary things. And again, I have my own too, so don't think that I'm trying to, say that I'm above all this. I'm a regular human guy, just like anybody else out there. So, but that you can instantly, like a parabolic curve, some sort of, just goes straight up. You could say, whoa, that's what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Your ideals do that. But now your ability to live that, you got to go 2 + 2 + 2 + 2 + 2. It's okay to go at your own pace when accomplishing these type of things. Remember, we have eternity to do self-mastery. So this isn't like we need to do these things or else we're not living in and you'll see, because like I said, later on they explain how that is. We're talking about relaxing and flowing to live up to them. That's that arithmetical progression. But we can right now say, I want to have these divine ideals. And no matter what they are, you can look at it as, I don't know, any one of these examples, Like maybe a certain religion teaches that the man is supposed to be dominant over the woman. and that the woman is supposed to be the property and she needs to cover up and this and that. But we can say, no, that doesn't seem equal. Like, why do they get to be the ones that are treating the others as property? Are they better people than that? Probably more often than that, probably not. And so we're saying, no, we need to change that. Just like the all this Catholic Church business where they're saying, all this God hates fags type stuff. They're trying to change it, and a lot of them are struggling with it, and they don't this tension between all of this. And they're trying to say, hey, does God really hate gay people? I don't know about that. And there's just so much other things. Remember, we talked about the problems of the world are so interwoven with each other. It's like those knots in a jewelry box, all those chains knotted together. It's such a complicated and intricate knot, and each day new chains are being added. So this Catholic Church has so many other concepts associated with the deaconship and how many bishops are we going to promote this year, and it's so intricate. It's hard for them to just step back from that and just say, well, we don't believe God hates people anymore. Okay, so they don't have to, whether or not they celebrate Pride or something like that. That's not even shouldn't even be their business. That shouldn't even be, what they're a spiritual organization. It should be about fostering an individual's connection with God. Okay, and so here we go. Deliverance from such a predicament can only come through the realization. Oh, wait, okay. The sense of guilt, not the consciousness of sin. See, consciousness of sin is written on your hearts. The sense of guilt comes either from interrupted spiritual communion, right? That's that moment that you're deciding that you're not going to be connected to your higher mind and your divine ideals. That can happen when you go to that fridge and then you see a fruit or you see the animal flesh, and you're saying, you're going to have an interrupted spiritual communion, and then you're going to have a sense of guilt, in which we do. It's, okay, from the one's lowering of one's moral ideals. That will give you a sense of guilt where you're just going to say, fuck it, I'll just do whatever the hell I want, right? That is going to be the lowering of moral ideals and just trying to pigeonhole yourself into this framework of saying whatever is okay, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm a human having a human experience. And let's continue on here. Deliverance from such a predicament can only come through the realization that one's highest moral ideals are not necessarily synonymous with the will of God. See, that's how you say, that's deliverance, right? So you're in a predicament right now. You're in this phase of choosing, and you're saying, how can I deliver myself from this predicament where I'm trying to do the right thing here and I don't quite know what it is, blah, blah, blah. When you realize that the highest moral ideals are not necessarily synonymous with the will of God, then you will look at what is the will of God. And that's when you take everything into consideration, all of the philosophies, all of the isms, all of the medical science. And that is when you're putting the full picture together. And that's what this book helps you do, without being a thing that's saying, if you do this, then you're going to hell, blah, blah, blah. No, they say hell doesn't exist. There's mercy, but eventually there's justice. Man cannot hope to live up to his highest ideals. See, they're saying you can't even do it, really, but he could be true to his purpose of finding God and becoming more like him. So have the ideals, but don't beat yourself up if you can't live up to them. And that is the nuance that all of the other things, see, remember I said, mankind has no sense of proportion. It's like, how can I have ideals and not live up to them and still be in the divine, light? How can I still be walking in the light? Because you have the purpose of finding God, and you're saying, you know what, I'm human right now. Hey, I made a mistake here and there, whether it be with diet, whether it be with, a relationship where I acted toxic and I was angry and I acted out of that. But I have the purpose to become more like this. So let's just let it play out. Let's not approve of it on an intellectual level, but we can accept it on an emotional level. And that is the key that I think What I've learned from this book that has helped me change my life, and that I would like to allow people to understand, because it's not just, oh, that's such a book of sin this, sin that. It's not that, because it's saying you can allow for the eternity. See, it's saying you can't even live up to it. It goes on to say that in other aspects of the book, okay? Your highest ideals, man cannot hope to live up to your highest ideals, it's saying. So it's not even saying you have to be able to do that and be a perfect master and go into a cave and meditate for 8 years to have complete control. It's saying you can do that. That's fine. You could do your best. But even beings that it points out, even people that meditate for 4 hours a day, they start to enter into this realm of abstraction too. And it's cautioning against that, because we want to socialize ourselves. Remember, spiritual communion. Here we go. Jesus swept away all of the ceremonials of sacrifice and atonement. See, no more. If it's a you don't have to do an atonement in a way of like, let's dwell on our, negativity. You brush that off. He destroyed the basis of all this fictitious guilt. See, that's the fictitious part, and sense of isolation in the universe by declaring that man is a child of God, and that creature-creator relationship was placed on child-parent basis, right? If a child makes an error, the parent isn't going to disown them. Well, they shouldn't if they're, a divine, if they have these, high ideals. God becomes a loving father to his mortal sons and daughters. Are all ceremonials not a legitimate part of such an intimate family relationship are forever abrogated? Okay, that means done away with. So God becomes a loving father to his mortal sons and daughters. And remember, it's the true purpose of finding God and becoming more like him. You look at that purpose, and God looks at that purpose, looks at your intent in that. And you can feel it throughout your day. Would you rather be a beat yourself up over a type of making a mistake? That doesn't sound like you're walking in the light. Or would you rather be someone who says, no, that's fine, you can do whatever you want, Monsanto, poison our food, we don't give a shit, as long as you guys make your billions, hey, that's fine, that's good to do that, right? You have to have a clear sense of what is the will of God, right? But it doesn't mean that you have to try to force yourself in a battle struggle type of thing, because you just say, hey, it was my lower nature, I'm stronger than that, I'm going to brush that one off, and when I have more energy, I'm going to try again, and next time I'm going to make the better choice. And it's those simple mantras, right? So remember, this communion thing, it just literally means you're in some sort of conversation, you're communing with deity and divinity. However you want to do that is fine. But what we've learned, it's not a sense of ceremonials, that it doesn't matter what hat you wear, okay? It doesn't matter if you're dressed like a wizard, or you do the sacrifice and you sit there and you atone. We're trying to do the breaking of shackles. That's a shackle. So that's swept away. And once you learn that that's actually a stumbling block, which you thought was the thing that was helping you connect with God, you're saying, whoa, now I'm going much more direct. That's what we're looking for here. Direction in our spiritual ascent, not indirection. If you have a priest, an intermediary, then that is some sort of indirection. You can have, it's fine to, listen to somebody that's been studying and that sort of thing. That's great. If this guy wants, and he's uplifting and he has the time to dwell on spirituality, then that's fine. And you might not have it. But don't think that your connection with God has anything to do with that person at all. And other that maybe he'll just give you some advice. Or maybe this book will just give you some advice. There's no God inside of this book. The God is inside of you. So go to direct spiritual communion. And then if a bunch of people do that together, then that's where that group worship comes in, which doesn't have to do like we all have to wear the same clothes, or we all have to be hippies doing a drum circle or something like that. No, just be yourself. And then just say, I have the attitude of communing with the divine. You have the attitude, we're letting go of our selfish, self-centered thing here, But, you know, be yourself. If you want to do a drum, then go for it. You know, be a hippie and do a drum. But you don't all have to be the same person in order. We're not going to be the same person. It's a big world. We all are going to have different viewpoints. We all have different races and this and that. We're born in different environments. It's not about that. Remember, unity, not uniformity. All right, please like and subscribe to the videos, folks. Thanks again. Appreciate everybody that's participating here, and we'll see you in the next one.